Well, good morning, fellow New Democrats. It's great to see you all out looking so good this morning. Let's have a great convention. Here we go. Here we go. Welcome to the largest in-person gathering of NDP members in the last 3 years, and I will note the largest gathering of NDP premiers since Darrell Dexter met Gary Dewar for coffee in 2008. It's an exciting time. Oh, you like that joke? Good, we're off on the right foot. Here we go. Here we go. It's so good to see so many of you here in Hamilton. It might not be particularly well known. Actually, let me just start, of course, by recognizing the territory that we're on here. We're on the territory of the Erie, the Neutral, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga people, and it's great to be here. Not many of you will know this, and I'm glad to share that I grew up just down the road in Kitchener, Ontario. You know, we got some Kitchener people in the house. Good to see you. It was a great place to grow up. Grew up in a middle-class family. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a community lawyer with a community-focused legal practice. I had 2 younger brothers and a sister. And they really taught me the values that I try to bring to the job that I have today. It's about commitment to family. It's about commitment to community. And recognizing all the advantages that we had at home, supporting other people to be able to have those same opportunities and making sure that our community is strong. Kitchener was also where I got my first foray into activism. And one of the stories that I like to share, and usually it's my younger brother who tells this story, is I was very interested and concerned about the treatment of animals. And on a particular Sunday, my parents thought we were going to church. My younger brother thought we were going to the circus. And we were, in fact, going to the circus, but we were going to sit out back and videotape the treatment of animals, which was the plan that I knew that we had. And, you know, I thought he'd eventually get over it, but you know what they say about kids in their first elephant protest? They never forget. Pretty good. Pretty good. Oh, you guys. This is going to be great for you, man. This is a good crowd today. From that day on, you know, really I was hooked. Activism for me was a way to connect the values that I had with trying to make a difference for people in the world. And it was with that kind of approach, I went to law school. I didn't go to law school to become the premier or a politician. I went to law school to learn how to sue politicians. Because I grew up in Ontario, and I saw that politicians could only be held accountable, in my opinion, through the courts. One of my first jobs as a lawyer was working in Vancouver's downtown east side. And for those of you that aren't familiar with this neighborhood, it's one of the poorest urban neighborhoods in Canada. A bunch of people who didn't have the same opportunities, to say the least, that I had, preyed on by all different groups and individuals. And my job was to be a housing lawyer for a nonprofit organization in that neighborhood. So one day I got a call that one of the buildings on Hastings Street was being condemned, and it was happening really quickly. So I rushed down to the building to see what was going on. And all the residents of the building were on the sidewalk out front of this rooming house called the Burns Block. There I met Veronica Crow-Eagle, who would eventually become one of my clients. Now, she and her neighbors in that building hadn't done anything wrong. The fire department had come, done an inspection of the building. The fire escapes were boarded up. The building wasn't safe. The sprinklers didn't work. And they said to the landlord, look, you've got to either fix these fire hazards for people, or we're going to close the building. Now, the firefighters, just doing their job, never imagined the response of the guy who owned the building. The guy who owned the building knew that his building was more valuable empty than it was with the tenants inside. So instead of rushing to Home Depot to get the supplies to fix the issues in the building, he rushed to Home Depot to buy plywood and a saw and a hammer and some nails so that he could board up the door after the tenants were all evicted. Because the building was worth more without the people. As a lawyer, I supported Veronica and her neighbors getting a little bit of money for them, but I was stuck with the laws that we had. I was trying to force these laws to work for people, and they weren't written for people. They were written for the speculator who bought the building and wanted them gone. And it was one of the many experiences I had working in that neighborhood, one of the many lessons I learned from the people in that neighborhood that directed me into politics and public life, to make laws that can actually support people. And so it was a big deal for me when we formed government 6 years ago, when Premier Horgan called me up and said, look, I'd like you to be Attorney General. And then 4 years later, he made me Minister of Housing. Because as Minister of Housing in an NDP government, we went and we bought that building and we opened it up for women and children fleeing violence. And you know what that building's called today? It's called Veronica's Place, after Veronica Crowley. Now, I'm telling you that story today at this convention for a reason. This room is full of activists. It's full of people who, from coast to coast, will not rest until we have a more fair, more equal, more sustainable country for everybody. And as a party, we can never lose that activist energy. It's who we are, and it's how we get things done. Absolutely. And I look, ironically, over to my right. I look over to my right, and I see another group of people. And I know in the audience there are others working side by side with them who are passionate about electing Canada's first social democratic federal government. People are really counting on us to keep the focus on what matters for them. They want us to use the power that this political party has to make life better for them. They want to see it. In British Columbia, we've had a BC NDP government, which I have been so honored to be a part of, for 6 years, and before that, 4 years in opposition. I did spend that time in opposition, part of 16 years of the most mean-spirited austerity you could ever imagine. And so what has it meant to transition from that kind of government into a social democratic government in British Columbia? And let me just say, as an aside to the BC delegates, you're going to be very familiar with some of the items on this list, but you may be shocked to hear that sometimes our news in BC does not make it east of the Rockies. I know, I'm concerned as well. That was a joke just for British Columbia. Everyone's like, really? We don't get BC news here? Yeah, no, we don't. First, an NDP government in British Columbia, when we started our mandate, we ended the no-limit, Wild West political donation system we had in British Columbia. Try to imagine a world where if you've got $10,000 to spare, you can sit down with the Premier for dinner, if you make that donation to her political party. And then the same Premier, sounds like Saskatchewan. We got to fix that too, right? So if you got your $10,000, you put it down for dinner, and then the Premier sits down for dinner with you as the leader of her party, pays herself an additional salary out of those donations in addition to the salary she's paid as the Premier. That's how things were working in British Columbia, where rich people who could afford to do that, or big companies from anywhere in the world, decided the fate of our province, not people. Unacceptable. We ended that system. Now, I'm loving the little BC flags, by the way. I think that's fantastic. It was a province where we went from And you'll often hear among the lowest or one of the lowest. No, the lowest minimum wage in all of Canada to the highest minimum wage in the country to make sure low-wage workers aren't lining up at food banks. And it's a province now where you're allowed to get sick and you're still able to make rent because workers have paid sick days in British Columbia. Can you imagine the breakthroughs we're having over there? And single-step certification means it's possible for more people to join the middle class in our province because it's easier to join a union. Having an NDP government means that a province that was used to cutting, used to seeing impacts on all the services they needed, we're not cutting, we're building. We're building schools. We're building hospitals across the province. We're building bridges, public transit, roads, affordable homes everywhere in British Columbia. Instead of firing, we are hiring in British Columbia. In fact, 20 years after the largest mass firing in BC history, predominantly women of color, under our Conservative predecessors, we brought over 4,000 privatized healthcare workers back into the public sector. Now they have wages where they can actually afford to support their families. Now they have working conditions where they're safe at work. Now they have job security to make sure they can have confidence about the future. Having an NDP government means instead of cutting taxes for those at the top, we're cutting costs for everybody, and that's never been more important. In BC, absolutely. Absolutely. In BC and Ontario, I want you to hear this, public auto insurance is down by hundreds of dollars a month. It's cheaper than here, and the benefits are better. For many parents, childcare bills have been cut in half. And I know, I would say, there's a few parents who are like, yeah, that's good news. And I saw the Bill Blakey video there, brought a tear to my eye, the work and the defense of public health care. Every New Democrat is close to our heart. Free public health care for all Canadians. Oh, wait, in British Columbia, health care wasn't free. You know about this? There was a charge that people paid every year called the medical services premium. And it went up every year. Well, now in British Columbia, healthcare is actually free. We got rid of the MSP. One of my favorite stories is one of our MLAs. We call them MLAs in British Columbia, MPPs. One of our MLAs got a call from a constituent, and she was really worried. This is a low-income senior in this MLA's community. And she said, I haven't received my MSP bill yet this year, and I want to make sure I pay it, but I haven't gotten the bill. And you have a lot of challenging casework as an elected official, but days like that are when it makes it all worthwhile, when you can say, the reason you didn't get a bill is because you don't have to pay it this year. Use that money for what you need in your life. The healthcare is free in BC. That was the largest middle-class tax cut in provincial history in a generation. You got to look after people. Now, being an NDP government also means taking the issue of public safety seriously. And it's about responding to the issues that people are seeing and experiencing in their communities. So in BC, we're increasing the number of mental health response teams, so that when someone's in mental health crisis, instead of law enforcement responding to them, they have someone with lived experience, professionals to assist them with support and compassion. And at the same time, We're advocating for necessary bail reforms to make sure that people feel safe in their communities. Instead of And this is one that doesn't get the attention that it deserves, but it is foundational to our government. It was a key priority for Premier Horgan. It's a key priority for me. Moving away from short-term transactional relationships with Indigenous people in our province. Instead, we're building meaningful, long-lasting relationships with First Nations based on respect. Absolutely. Based on respect, based on the principles of reconciliation, and as the first province to recognize and enshrine the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People in our provincial law. We've done all of this work, supporting affordability for the middle class, supporting people struggling in low-wage jobs, delivering attainable housing for people, while adopting one of the strongest climate action plans on the continent, and while leading Canada's post-pandemic economic recovery. You know, we've shown that supporting people, protecting our environment, and growing our economy are not mutually exclusive. In fact, as everybody in this room knows, they are linked together. Childcare is an economic program. Are you with me? Are you with me on that? Absolutely. It also means electing people that look more like the communities that we serve. You know, in British Columbia, we were so proud to swear in the first South Asian speaker in North America, in British Columbia. Now, Raj, who's an amazing guy, himself was an organizer with the Farm Workers Union, defending the rights of marginalized farm workers across British Columbia. He's the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, where previously you wouldn't have even been allowed to vote. Now he's the Speaker. And the first South Asian Education Minister. And the first South Asian woman who's our Attorney General. And the first Turban Sikh to sit as an elected official in our legislature. All New Democrats and more women than men around the cabinet table. These are really important things. But in this time, as we look across the country and around the world, the attack on people's rights and the divisive rhetoric, trying to split people apart instead of bring us together, I want to tell you a couple other things, why it matters to have an NDP government. Having an NDP government in power means having a government that will never, ever use the notwithstanding clause to attack the rights of workers. Never. Never. Having an NDP government means having a government that will never, ever use the notwithstanding clause to attack the most vulnerable kids in our schools. Never. Never. Yeah. Absolutely. Because for Canadians, for people across the country, having an NDP government means establishing a firewall against the U.S. culture war, divisive, awful, racist, discriminatory, homophobic, rhetoric and nonsense that people are trying so hard to bring into this country. Now, it's not been all sunshine and roses. I want to tell you that there was one negative and challenging thing about being an NDP premier. When all the premiers get together at the Council of the Federation, it's been a bit lonely. But not any longer. Congratulations, NDP Premier Wab Kinew, on your history-making election. Amazing. Now, I want to send a special thank you. Where are the Manitoba delegates at? Thank you for sending me a friend. Thank you for sending me a friend. They're all working right now, right? There's a lot to do in Manitoba. Holy cow. I'm glad you're on the job. I know how hard the folks in Manitoba worked. I know how hard many of you in this room worked to deliver an NDP government in Manitoba. Thank you, thank you, thank you for making it a reality. It makes a huge difference. And I was on a call with the Western premiers literally yesterday, and Wab joined for the first time. Feels good. Feels good. Now, one of the reasons why I think that Wab was successful, beyond just the hard work and the long hours of all the volunteers and everybody who helped, his campaign was inspiring to people because he really focused what mattered most to Manitobans and to all Canadians. Improving healthcare, making life more affordable for people, and bringing people together instead of trying to drive them apart. And as Premier, I know he's going to deliver. I know he's going to deliver. And with my height, and with his famous three-point shot, I think we're going to wipe the floor with those Conservative premiers at the 2-on-2 tournament. All right? I think that's right. Now, I want to let you know that the power and the ability of this party to change the lives of people isn't limited to those who occupy the Premier's office or those who sit in the office of the Prime Minister. Just look at what Jagmeet Singh and the team over here have done for people in Canada. A dental care program for families that couldn't even afford to send their kid to the dentist or sending their kids to the dentist for the first time. It's putting hundreds of dollars back in the pockets of families who scraped money together and were able to get their kid to the dentist. It is making a real difference in the lives of people. Incredible work. Incredible work. Now, Jagmeet and the team, by using their power in this way, they're walking in the footsteps of the best traditions of our party. You know, amazing people like Tommy Douglas, like Jack Layton, like David Lewis, who used their position in Parliament to change this country forever. Thank you, Jagmeet. Thank you, team, federal team NDP. And while we've made significant progress as New Democrats, we know there is so much more to do for people. We know it's tough for folks out there right now. You know, we just had the vaccines enable us to get back to life, to the people we love, the things we love to do, and along come new challenges. Global inflation driving up the cost of everything, rising costs of groceries, other daily essentials. impacting the cost of housing even further, those who thought they might be able to get into the housing market having those dreams dashed, and overlapping crises that have only become more acute. Talked about housing, the toxic drug crisis, the impacts of climate change, which we have seen 100% in British Columbia, and I know across the country. Now, believe it or not, there are still people out there who say that the solution to these problems is to get government out of the way. They say, look, you'd be better off if you just tried to solve your own problems by yourself. And some people still call this approach common sense. Does it sound familiar, Hamilton? It sound familiar? It didn't work too well in Ontario when I was growing up here, I'll tell you that. And it was at the heart of the plan to go into the Greenbelt and to mortgage our children's food security future, to rip out the wetlands and the forests in a short-term deal for developer pals. That is the common sense that these people are advocating. And that is a plan, absolutely, and that is a plan that was defeated by campaigners in this room, led by Marit Stiles and the Ontario NDP. Way to go. Way to go. See, we still get your news in British Columbia. Now, some say that the free market is going to solve the housing crisis that we face in Canada. We just get out of the way of the big developers and the investors, problem's going to solve itself. It'll work itself out, the market, invisible hand. Just be patient. But that is exactly how we got in this mess in the first place, right? Do you remember? Do you remember when government built housing for people? They sure did. They sure did. This is not a new thing. But what is new is that for decades, governments made a deliberate decision to pull out of building the housing that people needed. It wasn't an accident. It was a coordinated retreat. It was the plan. It was a retreat that deliberately opened the door to speculators who bought and flipped homes and rental units for a profit. One of them is leading the party that we're running against in British Columbia right now, driving up the cost of housing for everybody. And now we've got a huge hole we've got to dig ourselves out of. It's going to take an all-hands-on-deck, all of the above approach to deal with housing. It's going to take all of us working together. Municipalities, home builders, tradespeople, nonprofits, co-ops, all levels of government, First Nations. And that is exactly what our government is doing in British Columbia. In this room, we know we're all in this together is so much better than you're on your own. We know how to make progress by working together. And we're not alone in that belief, appropriately enough. For a growing number of Canadians, the hard-won lessons of these past years have driven home something else. Not what the right wing calls common sense, which is helping their friends, but common values that understand the vital role that's played by governments in facing these big challenges. See, NDP, we believe that the government is how we solve problems together. Common values put a premium on solidarity, on fairness, on democracy, on reconciliation. So in these times when it's so easy for people to lose hope, our friends, our neighbors, people we love, when our political rivals are taking advantage of those anxieties to drive a wedge in our communities and alienate people from each other, we have to hold on to that one simple truth, that we, as the NDP, have the power to make things better. You know, we're not going to make it. We're not going to make it very far if we don't let people know where we're going. We have ideas that speak to what people want, and we have ideas that speak to what people need. So for those of us in government, we have a responsibility to deliver in ways that people can see and touch and feel in their communities so that they know we're on their side. And for those of us in opposition, to articulate those visions in ways that people can understand so they're ready to stand with us and make a change. Our opponents on the other side would love it if we talked about concerns like crime and public safety in a way that puts us out of touch with what people are seeing in their communities. They would love it if we failed to show in a meaningful way how resource workers are not just part of our clean future economy, but they are foundational to it. And they would like nothing more than to distract us by dividing people here and there. It's how they operate. Here's my message to you. Don't let them. Right? Don't let them. Please stay focused on what matters most to people. Bring people together. Listen to their priorities and take action on them in ways that they can see. If we do that, literally anything is possible. I was part of a team who defeated a sitting premier in her own riding when we did that. I'm part of a team that is a second-term BC NDP majority government after 16 long years in the wilderness. We were once reduced to 2 seats in the legislature. Well, now we have the largest BC NDP caucus in our province's history. Don't let them. Don't let them trick people into thinking that they're on the side of people because they are not. Don't let them use the Republican playbook to divide us. Don't let them get away with attacking trans kids. Don't let them. They will say our vision is impossible. They will say we can't afford it. But don't let them tell you it can't be done because we're doing it. We have the power to make things better. We can build a country where everyone can build a good life. We can have a country where you can afford a decent home in the community that you love. We can be a place where you send your kids to a great neighborhood school, where you and your family get the health care you need, including access to a family doctor, where you get the training you need to pursue your dreams, and where we build a stronger and a cleaner economy that works better for people. And where we do all of this in partnership, true partnership with Indigenous people across the country, so all of our boats rise together. That's the better, brighter future that we can build. Let's do this together. Thank you.